It's 10 p.m. on a warm spring night in April, and I'm all alone in Franklin Square in the heart of historic Philadelphia. Well, not completely alone. I'm with a photographer, a videographer, and a drone. It's the night before the opening of the Philadelphia Chinese Lantern Festival, and I'm ogling this 200-foot dragon made of lights. Franklin Square is magical. There are 1,500 sculptures made of steel and silk and light, handmade by master artisans from China. The images and video are breathtaking. Giant lions, a 3-story pagoda, adorable pandas riding up and down on a silk seesaw. The videographer hops on a skateboard to film a GoPro move through a tunnel of light. It's so cool. As a communications professional, I'm thinking, this is PR gold. Sure enough, the next night we have gorgeous spring weather. Dragon dancers are at the ready, a polished script. And then in the middle of the program, at the foot of the stage, 2 people start screaming, "Shame on you! Shame on you!" They're protesting that visitors have to buy tickets to see the lanterns. I was so not ready for that, I froze. I've been helping nonprofits tell their stories for more than 2 decades. I know that good work has a good story to tell. We all have a story to tell, whether we're a corporation, a mission-driven organization, an innovative new startup, or a theater company with a new play. We all have things we want people to know about what we're doing. But if your big story falls in the forest and nobody hears it, does anyone care? There's always a bigger story than yours. A devastating hurricane, a sex scandal, an election, a protest. My message is very simple. There are 3 ways to make your story the big story. Cooperate with the big story, compete with the big story, or co-opt the big story. Let's start with the first one. Cooperate with the big story. The year is 2015. Pope Francis is coming to Philadelphia. And Mural Arts Philadelphia, who I've been working with for 10 years, has been asked to create a giant mural as a permanent remembrance of the visit. Mural Arts is the leading public art program in the country, having created over 30 years 4,000 murals for social change. But this is a big stage. No pressure here. I said, let's dream big. Let's get hundreds of people involved, use the power of art to bring them together, and maybe they'll learn some more about mural arts along the way. First, we plan a press event in front of the Catholic school where the mural would go. We enlarge renderings, invite students, engage the media. But then overnight, there is a horrible, deadly train crash. What should we do? We didn't want to look insensitive. At 5 a.m., we realized we had to pull the plug. So we put away the renderings. You want to cooperate with the big story, but sometimes you have to be flexible about when the time is right. We held the press event 2 weeks later. Now the real work began. The artist had to create a 4,000 square foot mural in a few short months. We needed 2,500 people to help paint 153 5-foot by 5-foot cloth panels in a paint-by-number system. We got so many people involved, we managed to get a Guinness World Record for the most people to paint by number. But we wanted more. We wanted to see if maybe the Pope would paint a little bit of the mural during his visit. Hey, a girl can dream, right? Get this, the Vatican says yes. And he'll do it live on television in front of millions of people. But then we find out the Pope only travels with 2 outfits. That's right, only 2 white robes. He's a simple person after all, and there is no way we can risk getting a splash of permanent mural paint on one of those crisp white robes. The night before the celebration, I spent 4 hours at a rehearsal with the mural artist and 2 stage managers and 3 children who were to carry the mural panel on stage. Maybe the Pope can sign his name with something instead. We experiment, different kinds of giant Sharpies and placement angles, until we have the right combination. At the end of this marathon rehearsal, the organizer turns to me. Would you like to sit on stage with us at the big event? Who, me? Yes, you, and the head of mural arts. And that's how two Jewish women ended up on stage with the Pope in front of millions of people. The point is dream big, but you have to be flexible along the way. You want to cooperate with the big story, but you have to be creative when obstacles get thrown in your path. So that's the first one, cooperate with the big story. Now, compete with the big story. Back to those protesters at the Chinese Lantern Festival. Franklin Square is my favorite spot in all of Philadelphia. 10 years before the festival, it was a homeless crack park until the nonprofit Historic Philadelphia, my client, raised the money and renovated the square, adding attractions like a carousel and mini golf to help make it self-sustaining. So it was especially upsetting that protests and two particularly opinionated reporters changed the narrative, saying we shouldn't close public space or charge a fee to see the lanterns. We had to regroup quickly. It was so frustrating. We had to challenge their narrative. It had become a big story, a hot topic we didn't control. That's when I encouraged the CEO to speak out, and I even took on some of those reporters myself. The way you do this is by acknowledging the opposing story and countering each point. It's too expensive. Heck, it's cheaper than the zoo or a Phillies game. Besides, it's free during the day. You're closing public space and charging money. Well, the playgrounds are free day or night, and besides, the revenue is going back into free year-round events. The fence around the square is ugly. Okay, they had us there. It is ugly. So we designed some new signage to make it more attractive. In year 2, we even hired an architect to make it really beautiful. Our new narrative worked. By the end of the 7 weeks of that first Chinese Lantern Festival, 100,000 people came to see it. My favorite night was the Friday night of Memorial Day weekend when the CEO texted me a photo of 1,000 people watching one of the acrobatic performances. Under the photo, it said, "What protest?" We had competed with the opposing story and come out on top. You might have to do that too. You're going to get complaints. You might even face a crisis or two. You have to deal with real problems, but if you have the right story to tell, you might even change a mind, or two, or 100,000. Okay, so first was cooperate with the story, then compete with the story. Now, here's how you co-opt the big story. Here's some non-fake news. The media, sometimes, are completely predictable. For example, on the hottest day of the summer, you can be sure that you will see photos of children playing in fire hydrants or workers laying pavement in the steaming heat. I found a fun twist. I offered up Historic Philadelphia's costumed interpreters in their wool period garb, greeting visitors outdoors. Aren't you hot in that? Every interpreter gets asked on those hot days. I call it Colonials in Heat. The press love it. That's a small way to co-opt the conversation of the day. Here's a bigger example. For 2 years, Mural Arts Philadelphia was planning a project called Monument Lab, working with artists to answer a singular question: what makes an appropriate monument for the current city of Philadelphia? We asked 20 artists to create temporary monuments in 10 public parks over 9 weeks. The public could even propose their own monuments during the exhibition. We spent months brainstorming how to get the media interested. 1 month before the opening, there is a huge white supremacist rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, and a protester is killed. Imagine what we're thinking. Someone actually died protesting a monument. Suddenly, the whole country is talking about monuments. Even in Philadelphia, where a mural and a statue to a racially polarizing former mayor are under attack. I'm on the beach in Georgia and my phone rings. What am I going to do? It's my job to take the headlines and use them to our advantage. That's what I mean by co-opt the story. That's what we did. We wrote an op-ed about monuments. I pitched a national TV story. And we got really creative about unveiling a new installation so that it was primed to go viral, as if you can plan that sort of thing. That installation was a giant Afro pick with a black power fist by artist Hank Willis Thomas across the street from City Hall, feet away from that statue of the controversial mayor. Sure enough, the pick becomes a flashpoint. A crowd gathers, 2 reporters show up, more arrive, city workers are posting on Instagram. A local hip-hop artist writes a rap on the spot. And we open the exhibition the next day. Not everyone loved it, but everyone was talking about it. The national conversation about monuments is divisive, playing into passions about race and history. Mural art saw a way for art to change and open that conversation. But we had to figure out how to begin the conversation. The way to make your story the big story is to keep an eye on what is in the news. What are people talking about? And constantly ask yourself, how can I tie my story into that? When the headlines help your narrative, act quickly. Tomorrow may be too late. Make your story the big story today. Someone asked me recently, why do you do what you do? Why do you choose clients who are working to improve their communities? Why do you have this drive to dig for stories and share them with the world? I had to probe a little to figure it out. Clearly, some stories from my childhood have helped me guide this passion. I remember being in 4th grade gym class in Savannah, Georgia, when a group of my classmates started dancing around me and chanting, "You killed Jesus, you killed Jesus." It was confusing and scary. What did I do wrong? In high school, it was frowned upon for me to be seen in public with an African-American male friend I wasn't even interested in dating. Who cares what other people think? This should be okay. I watched my mother yearn for a career, despite being a devoted parent and wife. If she had been born 20 years later, she would have been encouraged, like her brother, to become a doctor. Instead, her father suggested she become a medical illustrator. How is that fair? It wasn't until I found my voice as an adult that I realized I could take on such difficult issues. I always knew anti-Semitism, racism, and sexism were unjust, but I didn't have the confidence or the tools to challenge them. Now I know the only way to improve unjust behaviors is to talk about them. You can't change behaviors unless you change the stories we tell about them. Everyone deserves an equal chance to tell their stories from their perspectives. And that's where you come in. You have a story to tell. Look at the narratives dominating the world today. Which one speaks to you? As we see every day, some of the biggest stories of all are about justice, fairness, compassion, and equality. Which one can you tie your story to? Now go, tell your story, and make it a big one.